Thank you. I'm going to try. I've read the beginning of the poem that ends this book. I've never read it all the way through, and I think I can do it if I don't do anything else, though Steve Yarborough was asking me to read Bad Dog. For those who like to give me vodka, I brought this. And the poem takes place in a mall outside Atlanta, so I thought this was the right stuff to have. The poem's entitled Nod, and it has two main speakers. One, we never get his name. He does maybe most of the talking, more of the talking. The other one is sort of the voice of disappointment. He's kind of a Georgia Cracker as Mephistopheles or something like that. Sees himself, he's in security, and he sees himself in some way or another playing a vital role as an antagonist. There are a couple of things mentioned in here. Chandelle and Immelman are aviation maneuvers. The Immelman was invented in World War I. It's a way to throw off somebody on your tail. You go up, over, and roll. And Stilwell, that name is mentioned in here. That was Vinegar Joe Stilwell, who was a general in the South Pacific, and he was the kind of general that Tim O'Brien or somebody would have liked to have had, because he told off superiors who were stupid and asking him to do things that would kill his people. Of course, he didn't get very high in the ranking. He also, at one point, ordered 6,000 condoms for his soldiers. And the staff for Admiral Nimitz, who didn't like him anyway, were outraged and wanted to make this a big issue. And Nimitz said, "Don't you understand? They're in the jungle. Those are to put on the barrels of the rifle in heavy rain. Send him the condoms." But he's just mentioned. Maybe he needs his own poem. This fellow's sort of at a loss, the speaker is in the beginning. Nod. And Nod is where Cain was banished. And really, if you go back and look at what it meant originally, it's a non-place, which is maybe what follows when you do something really awful. When in the middle of the afternoon on a well-marked asphalt parking lot, I came to myself, standing among the SUVs where the yellow signs and exit signs were lost, and where the July heat was oil and wave altering the eye of everything, so overhead the sun looked oxidized, while underneath moments of silica winked out of a field of black mica. Right then, turning about, seeing so many lights blinking up from black, I stopped and said, "Fulton, Fulton, just look at it, would you? The gloves are off, but that just means they're scattered on the mat. The entire world is parked and packed it in. Any old fight's better having than this. This is the flu before the fever touches you, the ache without a place to point, shadows hiding the end of the alley and an entire block of locked back doors. This is the neighborhood of calls for children and dogs who never return, that little land where sleep lies down and no one thinks to wake her up. Bring me back the pounding shoe and the gray Navy flushing Russian submarines. Give me that stretch where longing lives, space shots and Aaron up to bat, black coffee and the small collaterals of penny postcards, pets, T-bills meaning what they say. Steady the hall clock, scissoring hands so shirts are buttoned up and down at once and smiles stay fixed at flashbulb best. Give me, in short, a new deck, a fresh cut, another deal, a winning hand, as that's what needs some bringing back." But of course there was no Fulton, as over time the cars all idled off till I studied the mercury vapor lights, counted the empty parking spots, then addressing Fulton anyways, who's always somewhere else about, and me speaking a little too bravely too, just talking a little too much through my summer hat, said to Fulton, said to me, "So it begins, my rambling boy." And saying that, I heard a laugh that was a wheeze, that was a cough, as looking round I saw a coal go bright, go dark, redden, then fade, redden again, then disappear, some smoker working backwards from his light, thumb to finger, elbow out, till arm thrown forward weakly as exaggerated Nixon, He dropped his hand, exhaled, and coughed again, then cleared his throat and pointed with his cigarette. That lot ain't clover, is it, Bud? What do you think you're looking for? Not a thing, I said. Thing? A little breath of smoke spoke back. Now that's a category, ain't it, Bud? And a fibber of an argument as well. Much like that friend you say you got. What's his name? Fuller? Flap? That guy's about as real as Mrs. Thatcher sleeping in the back seat of a Mercury, some choir singing her the hymn of human happiness and misery. Stepping from the door, he stood so's I could see. He had big teeth that made him look to smile, but he didn't smile. Wire glasses, sunken chest, thin tie, and gray fedora, cocked and caved. He stared ahead but had the backward eyes of someone saying A while thinking B. Nodding, he said, "Wife will tell you." A tall woman was struggling from the back seat of an old low Mercury. A thin boy seated crookedly behind the wheel. "Wife will tell you everything you'll ever sing, friend. Then how it is you will forget the words, so make some up and whistle round till you have fumbled back to where you started out. But look you now, you out of cash, bump your noggin, forget your number, need a lift? That's me. I'm in security. I make the calls. I know what holds. Fire doors and double locks. There's nothing like a blaze one side and on the other the breathable air of reliable escape. So step this way. Use any name you like. Just look about and net you up a list of wants. The shops are thinning out, so now there's room to see what gives you appetite. Next, he was battling a double door till, shouldering inside, he said, "I know this stretch the way I know that modesty shoplifters use when touching things they may mean to take. Clothes under signs announcing sales or items on less prominent displays. Same as I know that shopper's ways beside the fitting room where going in all baggy clothes, she marches back fleshed out with 10 pounds off the rack. I know the stolen cards, the stiff-kneed walk from store to store, some idiot kid thinking to beat the call that trips the lights, and I know that kind of idleness that hesitates, then lifts and makes a comic break. That is my business, knowing the want that waits like sly forgetfulness, caged innocence. But never you mind my talking shops, I mean. They're always better when the folks are out. So just you look about. I have a call to make." And so what next? And so I walked, passing one store then another. But who is it ever starts one way and doesn't wind up turning some way other? First leg shifts, the second gets the weight, and off you go, this way, then that. And that is just the way I made my way. As on my left, there was a store with compasses, no maps, and lamps, no books, and carpets, but no furniture. And next to these, a window full of clocks announcing different times, and under those, recliners like exhausted yawns. While on my right, there were bookstores and cooking stores, wine shops and shops for shoes and hats, then outing gear, more shoes, more hats, gimmick bathroom scales and telephones, bird baths, bird feeders, wall thermometers, fake antique radios, air purifiers, a pet store where 2 Scotties barked, and either side of these 2 slow aquariums where color swam through color, while overhead an ornate cage held the day's bright birds folded for the night. Through all this, under and among all this, a girl was stepping cage to cage until she stopped, looked up and waved, then dropped her arm and turned away. And in the time she took to turn, that wheeze, that cough was back, tapping a smoke, until he thumbed a match and without looking brought it up. "Who's to remember," he said. "Who's to remember a nickel or a dime, or ever the time you saw your little dog get hit?" "And how you think you know my dog was hit?" I said. "I'm saying you were 6, the dog was 4, maybe 5. Just saying that, nothing more." "No, but it rolled, didn't it? Stood, then rolled. Looked, searching you to breathe. And what I think you thought that animal was thinking then was what I like to call that lethal lack of hope. seen in tired motels, slumped waiting rooms, discarded magazines, cufflinks, and watches with initials no one now knows how to read. He stalled on that, studied his shoes, then started again. Children and pets, he said, studying some mid-air vacancy, those in the pleasure of mockingbirds and attic fans running on all night, but to plagues and wars, bank runs and losing seasons, brilliant crashes, knuckled wrecks. Sometimes I hear the entire chorus in the white noise of my central air. He stopped again, dropped his smoke, looked down, toed it flat, then nodded toward a mannequin. Blue blazer, bucks, and yachting cap, sanded face. Some guy wants to tell me how a heart gets full, give reason why a soldier can't go home, the world too big to fit his rearview mirror, some such. I say don't waste your needle on that thread. It never knots, and the wool won't hold. Besides, you bundle up because it's cold. You're only living in the cold. It's July 3, I said. We're standing in a mall outside Atlanta, Georgia. It's nearly dark, and no one's thinking anything but heat. Just ask your wife out in that parking lot, stuck in that cashed-in car you've got. Settle, settle, he said, palms to my face. You're right about the car, cashed in for sure. And running rough? Wife out there? Well, now just ask her what a word like rough might mean. But to our situation here, these stores, you hold a map and phone book side by side, you're any place you please. They're all the same. Miami to Chicago is Boston to LA. You got your size, they got your fit. After that, he lifted his hat, looked over his glasses, eyebrows up, then let the hat drop back and said, all the news I have to tell you is I've been to sea, steamed through the hurricane, survived a wreck and floated the salt wave for 3 days, shoveled a forest fire, sandbagged a flood, delivered my daughter on the kitchen floor while the doctor talked me through by telephone, watched a twister swallow my house, lived on either coast and parts between, and these and more leave me to tell you for a certain fact that of all the places that I've ever been, well, this is one of them. Then he was searching his pockets and taking his time too, till looking round and speaking almost shyly, he said, you know, my honest name is Byram Thatch, but no one's ever called me anything but Floyd. This is 2. All right, I said. So Mr. Thatch, so Mr. Floyd, and now the two of you staring from under the same fedora. We're talking early blooms and sunlight where a building's wall will block the wind and let today pretend it is tomorrow. We're talking why the front door opens from the back, as why the what-not ends with not, when get comes second and forget. We're saying reflect you now upon the deepening silence found in a sea of trouble, and by that mean sometimes there's more, but then again sometimes there's less. Just like you better watch those mice who growing fat suggest the rats are gone, as promise always begs another slice, which is to say, Floyd, standing here, you're better off than Byram there. I nodded off where a tall shape leaned, filling the pet store's sidewalk window. It sidled, stopped, looked in, shifted, looked again, hand shading eyes and arms against the glass. Then it was moving fast and headed for the double doors. So Byram, so Floyd, I said, picking it up, there's one thing more you might allow. If all you've ever heard is Floyd instead of Thatch or Byram Thatch or say Floyd Byram Thatch, well then that may just be the thing you bet your breakfast you will hear most anywhere, as the finch will chatter in one light, but the swallow winks you from another. It therefore seems right and fitting, or it fits about right, or it's right about like this, it fits to say that all those hurricanes and twisters, those floods and wrecks and salt waves you report, they're more like hyphens than what happened. Hey, he said, eyes narrowing, like Stillwell staring the bastards down. You don't have socks without some feet. No hat but got some noggin. I'm everything I said I was, and truth remains, there was in fact that cyclops of a hurricane. Then nodding up and down and side to side as though confirming yes and no at once, Floyd said, I meant things like the Goonie bird and how we thought up Burma shave. I meant so many things, and most of them like laughter on long porches in warm weather, or the rhythms of a rail car swaying under a full moon flooding fields, or an old man snoring the deep down hall where the good dog curls with stopping the door. I meant the way we say egads, good grief, gadzooks, or yo, Vinny, get a load of that stuff passing, would you? I meant superlatives, the way we do when starching uniforms, or raising flags, getting erections, or stiff nipples. Plus, too, there is contentment to be praised. As at day's end, the sun will set, so every little pond of self deepens upward into night, the way a pet's dark eyes will watch a hand with food. But then Floyd's voice had jumped a scale as he was saying, June, dear June, oh June, and all this in a tone of innocence one takes for children's birthday parties, or when driving them to get a shot, or any place where parents will pretend all the world's a beagle by the ears. We're here admiring animals, Floyd said, mouth like a cut, eyes siphoning. Admiring, June repeated, hands to waist, chin up and elbows out, feet wide. I am the bride, she said, turning my way, but never looking quite my way. I am the bride of all the little lies one hears, from tickets fixed to false names signed on hotel registries, from checks that bounce to bouncing mattresses, such things as these, which burn in memory like low-watt bulbs on summer porches where small flies will swarm, whispering themselves out of existence. Then, still turned my way but gazing so her eyes were locked above my head, she added, I will tell you a secret, little mister. Call for robin redbreast or the wren. Neither of these will hover again. Only the absent hours fly. Call either robin or the wren, but neither will hover again. And hearing that, I could have been back down the hall investigating exit signs or searching storefront windows filled with small collectibles. Floyd Byram Thatch stood some feet off striking a match. He stood some feet off, where striking a match, he cupped his hands, tilted his head, inhaled and held, exhaled, then, dropping the match, steadied his hands, one palm up and one palm down. And just like that, it settled over me that though I was the one addressed, I also was the one excused from what was coming next. I'll tell you, little mister, June said again, whether you will or no, you know, God loves his people much the way his people love their pets. So there's this for you, something that one there has never understood. She cut her eyes where Floyd looked down, still studying the separate practice of his hands. I took a tomcat once, June said, a feral, and I named him Foots because he had so many toes. Plus, too, he had his wander ways, such that come dinner, neighbors called to say, June, June, we have the cutest kittens needing homes. And I'd reply, how sweet, but I have Foots, you know. We do know, June, the other end would say. These kittens all have extra toes. Well, comedies like that will make one laugh only so long. In time, I gave commands. Not sleep, mind you, but an alteration of a kind I've come to recommend more days than not. A method neither this one here, she ran her eyes Floyd's way again, nor that cat then would ever comprehend. Somewhere along the hall, a hinge complained, a latch clicked shut, but by then June had turned and frowning down on Floyd was saying, oh, my poor repeated arrow, when will you ever understand that Junie winds up seeing everything. That's how her stories always end. There was that hinge again, crying in a long note till a door thumped shut, and this time hearing that, June cut things short. Standing taller than before, eyes scouring the hall, she stilled like a big cat watching food. And I stilled too, focusing great distances, like someone seated in reverse, who sees the landscape run ahead and back at once, as June kept staring over Floyd's fedora, and Floyd stood looking down as though he read the future in his feet. Then I was outside and in that parking lot, which darker now seemed larger than before, its lights and yellow circles on the asphalt where they made a kind of archipelago by which there was nowhere to go. And just like that, my smoke, my cough was back and standing near and asking me, "Ever hear of the answer man?" This and the slow, pleuritic wheeze of someone drawing oxygen, that or a Schrader valve letting your tire go flat. "Answer man," he said. "Hear of him? He's in those stories from that war in which the leaves are close as air, so sound is sight, and standing watch becomes your life. Meanwhile, back in America, it's anti-war and Mardi Gras, high numbers, sandals, beads, and silly smoke. But in the East, we had this little fact, and I was mailed a ticket that. And when I made it home again, I only had 3 friends, my mom, my dad, my dog. And then I took my second tour, so when I got back next, I just had 2. My dog had died. But you," I said, "you're standing back inside." "And 2, he answered. "Here I am with you." Then lifting his hat, he squinted me good and looked to smile, but he never smiled. Out in the lot, a car door slammed, a starter whined, and fan belts squealed until an engine caught, and the old low Mercury came idling, all windows down, the boy seated crookedly and staring through the steering wheel, while in the shadow of the car's rear seat, something twisted, settled back. This is 3. The bootleg and the button hook, the split wide end for getting in, and then the chandelle and the Immelman for getting your bacon out again. All these about as certain as a miner's inch, now that the entire lot stood empty as a stadium in which both teams just lost. But turning around, looking back, I saw a well-lit window framing tables, shelves, and racks, another mannequin, and farther back, high over these, suspended by a line too thin to see, there was a mobile of small paper birds, oaring one way underneath a ceiling fan that overhead clocked opposite. Only what agrees can disagree like that. Loud ties and madras coats, plaid shorts, pink shirts, wingtips and argyle socks, lawn parties where the conversation climbs a cumuli of slow balloons and never the smaller to the eye. Indoors, its manufacture fills. Outside, the laughter's almost melody. Inside, a second-hand runs idiot, or calendar will turn you out of date. But through an open window or a door left wide, the weather climbs its little tugs forever. Then just my thinking that, my friend, my cough was back and talking fast. "Games and races, wins and losses," he said. "Things you can't explain until they're done, and even then you lack reliables. They're like your hyphens, bud, but worse. Abandoned buildings, gutted houses, visits paid you every time you're driving by and something catches in your eye. Some vacant window staring back till what it's not is what you've got. Or say you have a tire goes flat, or shifter seizes in a turn, or say you hit a patch of ice, go wither shins, so fill a ditch and sit there staring what to when till someone stops and lends a hand. There is a hyphenate in that, a gap between your life and where you thought your life was going. Or say I am more hyphens than what happened. If so, that's why I'm in security. I don't believe in no one side. I only stock in doors that lock. Thatch nodded in agreement with himself, then pointed where the pet store clerk was walking out with something in her arms. It twisted round. She tightened up, looked left and right, then stepped into the headlights of a waiting car. Once on the other side, she handed in what she was holding, then folded after. The car eased up, June at the wheel, the crooked boy sitting in the back, smiling over what the clerk had brought. And what is this, I thought out loud. And what is this, Floyd mimicked back. You mean what water carries salt like that? It's everything I said it was. It's games and races you can't know, since while they're running, no one says which bets are wins and which one's losses. The Mercury was rolling now, two headlights like skimmed milk across the asphalt, where they spilled ahead through pale recurrent edges. Floyd watched until the car was gone, then cut a look my way, turned halfway round. Since we're still here, he said, I might as well point out one fact for certainty. Your Fulton isn't anything you hope. He's like an egg without a yolk, a thread without a knot. Oh, Fulton's just a family term, I said, a way of saying things gone opposite. You mean your Fulton is a lie? Floyd asked, staring hard, eyes brighter than before. A lie can tell you someone closer than the truth will do. A lie has motive, uses reason, has real opposites, and those are things we understand. A lie has cause, and that's a probable. A lie is reliable. Fulton's just for emphasis, I said. So now, Floyd slowed, you're telling me Fulton is the word you use for swearing? Swearing makes a match for lying, only better. Like politicians taking office, courtrooms and car dealerships, old meat, red dye, all labels changed. Swearing makes a probable, reliable as lies. And then there's the body and its sex. Those two are good for swearing. And names and pieties, they work as well. Swear words and lies, fire doors and locks, they separate and make a sense never a thirst got quenched. I never meant what you just said, I said. It doesn't matter how you meant it, Bud. The words are words. They wait you out. Meanwhile, your swearing makes one fine beginning. You sure do know a lot, I said, for someone who just opens up then closes down again. Floyd contemplated my small meanness till his face relaxed into a smile. Steadying his palms, he said, maybe so, just maybe so. Its closing always means the most. That's how the joke will work you best. It makes you feel you're getting more by giving less. Then Floyd looked where the Mercury had turned and disappeared. Policies and prices, he said. It's always words, and never a one to stanch a wound or fetch a body back. So what's it more to do than open up and lock back down? You got your name sewn in your coat because you're always losing it? You're on a train and looking back, arm raised to wave, but doing that, your hand just opens empty, says goodbye one side, and all it is you lack the other? You tell me Fulton's just a saying, just another Mrs. Calabash. I tell you he's a swear, that's all. There's totals, Bud. There's swears and totals. One to open, one to shut you down again. And any mouth says otherwise ain't got the spit to hock a quid. You take the answer man. Now he was totals. He knew before he asked. And God, he was a patience. You hurt so bad you couldn't say. Well, he could wait you out. He never was a one that wouldn't finish. He always give it time. He was a cold fact in that manner. If I were you there, Floyd, I said, or Mr. Thatch, or else Floyd Byram Thatch, I'd make me up a brakeman song and lift my hat and wave that idea off. Maybe you would, Floyd said, eyeing me, but what I got, you got as well. You're like that blue-tailed fly caught in a window, trapped and speeding up because the light is heating up. That's notion's yours, I said, no kind of mine. Liar, he said, squinting me good, tightening a penciled smile. You're sworn like me, just younger's all. Go make you up a story like a Christmas tree, or maybe like an old hall tree stacked full of coats and people in some other room and all of them returning soon. Just make you up a story of what's not, much like this empty parking lot. Do that and see who's it returning. All right, I said. All right, I will. And then this is the last section 4, and this is an attempt at the story 4. It's July 1953 and dark outside, and every room indoors is hot. So now the boy walks out to where the moon's a silver plate suspended over fields, hedgerows, a barn with gambreled roof, and sideways these exaggerated shadows through the landscape's cows and goats, 1 bull, 2 mules, the blind horse by the gate, and in a tree a mockingbird who summarizes all. The boy heads where his father laughs. His uncle has said something funny. They're talking gin and cotton. They sound certain. They drink the gin, discuss the cotton. Then as the boy steps close, his uncle's voice climbs up a bit, as now he's all about a milk cow lives on onions and a mule that likes to change its mind. And then there is the goat that takes the stairs up to the loft to have his slash of hay and eats so much he winds up lost inside the bales until one day he's chewed him free the entire way back out the other side. And next, there is the horse that flies, while underground an old potato eyes the souls of those who walk him overhead. Some of this the boy has heard before. He knows the horse that flies is from a book and knows the rest is like a joke. The way his sister says his ears are like an elephant's but larger, and that he has an inconvenient memory. She likes to say he's like a thing you get for free but didn't want. And even if he did know how to write, Santa wouldn't read his letter. She says it's hard to be so nice when everything before was better. She tells him that his head is full of feathers. The father and the uncle talk. The bird presides encyclopedically. Then for some reason both men laugh. Then both turn serious. It's what they call entailment. That is the subject now, until the uncle says, the cotton goes to gin, and they both laugh again. Their glasses sweat. And the boy can't answer what that means, much as he wonders why you write your numbers so they add, but then you spell them so they don't. Studying such, just gazing up, not thinking anything particular, he sees what looks to be the horse that flies, except it only rises, climbs the higher in one place, and never the smaller where it goes. See that, the boy says to himself. See that, he says again louder, tugging his father's arm to point. But the father's busy talking. Not until the boy looks down is there a way to make him listen. See, the boy repeats, pointing where he means. But when he looks again, there's nothing there. It climbed but never got the smaller, he says. It must have been an owl, his father answers. Or else the phantom after you, his sister adds. It was an owl, the father says a second time, so low it caught the angle of your eye. That low and fast an owl can look like anything. Like the phantom, the sister says, because you rival him in ugliness, so he's jealous and he's here to get you when you fall asleep. And when the boy explains again, the father says, an angel? No, I said an angle. an angle from your eye, which means you saw an owl is all, flying low and hurrying. For what? The boy asks absently. You saw it from the corner of your eye, the father tells impatiently. That made it look the farther off. But it was overhead. That's why you saw it differently. Phantom's different, Sister says. Or else it was a bat come close, the uncle adds. But never you mind what they will say, as now the boy is upstairs in his bed watching his little movie run itself start to finish. It always ends in silver, then starts again, and he keeps watching, proving that he's not afraid, just waiting for the others when they take the stairs to bed. And right there, Floyd, I summed it up. You have yourself a story of what's not that settles on what is. Floyd's eyes were off and on their own as they continued gazing all the distance it now took for him to telescope from boredom back to irritation. That's a catch you'll never eat, he said. We quit that kind of net 4 wars ago. Had to quit or else we'd lose. But just to lend a little balance, Bud, I'll tell you for the recollection, it's my daddy was the farmer yours and your uncle never made. My daddy had his cotton too, plus animals, and he could hunt. He made things grow, but then he knew to cut them down again. I seen him take 3 shots and drop 5 quail. And once a turkey flushed straight up, he dish-ragged that so never needed cleaning. I seen him dust the backsides off 2 mules and kill a neighbor's dog just for barking. And goats and cows, he bled 'em out and squared 'em up and ate 'em without comment. I seen my daddy pull a dead calf out of a cow and butcher it before the steam was off. You're hungry? You will welcome that. And where'd your daddy live, I asked. That's never been a certainty of fact, Floyd said, cutting his eyes an angle off. For all he did outside, he lived indoors. But sparrows and minnows, mosquitoes and fleas, he knew the list of it right down to those. You talk him such, I said. Just where's his fixed address, anyways? A lifetime's not the answer to that, Floyd said, eyes grazing over the parking slots, all of them empty. My daddy threw me out and down, so here I am with you, and that's the all of it. But I should add, before my daddy put me on the road, I had my reasons leaving too, like when I met those orange-tailed wasps, furious of a summer's afternoon. It's hard to flush them. Then you do, God, you're a stumble and a sorry. My daddy let me walk unknowing into that. Then did he ever hear me howl? But he just watched. Now, why'd he let a thing like that get on my back? He who always knew the next and next of it. You tell me why he let his own like that. I can't, I said. You bet you can't. Don't know, I said. I said, I can't, I said. You bet you can't. And why you think he threw me out? Don't know, I said. That's right, don't know. It was I mimed him good. That's why. He caught me doing that and threw me down where now there's no getting back, and all of that just for funning him. But could I make the others laugh? Had to be he hated that, 'cause with a twitch he threw me out and down to where I landed hard and got stoved up. So now I have a sunken chest and nervous eyes and never sleep for it's coming next. That's why I work security. But all I ever meant was be like him. I drive myself around exactly how he did. He always said I did, just sometimes in reverse. He said I was original in that, such that no one come close to me. Said why'd he stove my ribs like that, or let that orange-tail coven after me? You tell me why, I said. My patent's out. Nobody, Floyd said tightly back, ever owns a patent. His pupils were black mica. It's all of it, he said, in different manufacture. But I was like my daddy, and I imitated him. What more a father want? You always imitate what you believe. One night I get a little drunk and mimic him the way he opened animals, and slam, he sails me down to where there's no chance ever coming back. But I was just in compliment to what he meant, and like I said, we imitate what we believe. Meanwhile, he sailed me where there was no chance. I had a mind to kill him then, but couldn't make it back the way I'd come, and even if I had climbed up, his door was never opening my way. When I was little, fall and cry, my daddy said I was the one most human, 'cause I suffered most, and I believe he meant it too. But when I got the bigger and I'd cry, he'd mock me that. So over time, I learned his line. I mocked him back. And how I made the others laugh. But I got caught. That's when he called me little goat. And I knew what he meant by that. He hung his goats and slit their throats to see they bled the better. I wasn't the one to wait him that. Then faster than I understood my thought, he had me up and down the stairs and landing where he stove me up to stay that way. Sometimes I take a mind to get it right. I study up, but there's no climbing back. No words, because my daddy had a preacher's words for everything, though I was he who made us laugh. But then I landed hard for that. Sometimes I practice what I've learned. I even use another voice in point of fact. I think you mean as case in point, I said. Floyd shot me back. I meant it like I said it. Every object has its side from which to talk, and some of what I just described you couldn't watch. Meanwhile, I tell you for abiding fact, there never was a man forgive a father kicked him down. And all that on the day my brother bled it out, and I was nowhere near for that, but just the same there was a blame on me. Well, some tale you tell there, Floyd, and sure for the way you cut parts out. My argument exactly, bud. Just on a scale you've never heard before. But rub your own small scar. See how that grows. So, Floyd, I said, yours is the long truth tells us everything in short. By that you beat the best there is. The way insomnia says sleep, and just by that sees that you don't. Don't fun on me, Floyd said quick back. I'm funnier than you, and I know more. It's pressure gives the potent stuff. That got me insecurity and taught me the superlatives and how the order of the other side is always wrong. We wouldn't have one turn but that the other side turns opposite. Just try your little case alone and see how empty that will get. Or just you walk you down a hall or two, sizing stores you find along the way where not a lock on either side will give. I've stood that hall. I've waited that eventual. And Floyd went on with stuff like that, till though I had another thing to say, security had elbowed off, bird wings collapsing from his back, where he was crossing for his Mercury still idling, its alternator giving out, so headlights up, then headlights down. There was no June, no boy, no girl for him, just one door wide, through which Floyd caught his hat and worked himself behind the wheel, then made things turn. He wanted me to tell you he's for hire. I was asked to read Bad Dog, and I'll do that and stop. He was a bad dog, and he did not care. When nature called, he stood and lifted there. He chewed socks, rugs, and shoes, the rungs of chairs. Put on a leash, he locked his legs. He would not budge. Asleep, he barked and chased what was not there. Awake, he barked and chased what was not there. When danger knocked, he shrugged. I see him still that way, facing the door, floppy and kind, wet nose against the glass, or scratching over ears where going bald, then sniffing round to find just where he lifted earlier, the which he did just once more when at last nature called and he followed. Thank you all.